Hello everybody. Today I'm going to be explaining how we change key. It's a question which cropped up in the comments the other week, and so I'm happy to come here and explain it to you. Why would you want to change key? Well, it gives a sort of big shot in the arm. It gives you somewhere to go. It helps structurally give you a sort of big lift about a middle of the way through your song. When the song's going a bit, you change key and suddenly goes, hey, you know, it's like sort of a sugar rush when you're a 4-year-old or something like that. So I'm going to show you a number of different ways of doing this. The first one is going to be very, is the most straightforward way, which is basically using pivot chords, which is my level 1 Captain America, because Captain America is a bit of a vanilla, straightforward superhero. Then we're going to go on and use sort of pivot notes and things like that, which is a bit more of a Tony Stark moment, so that's level 2. And finally, we're going to go on and actually change mode, not just changing key, and that's the completely bonkers Doctor Strange level. Right, level 1. What's a pivot chord? How does that work? Okay, so if we're in C major, if I play you a chord of C major, that is chord 1 in the scale of C. It's also chord 4 in the scale of G major. It's also chord 5 in the scale of F. So any one chord can be more than one thing, and that is the secret, because each of these are jumping off points. And so I took a pointless trip to the top of a mountain in Italy to explain this very point to you. Here we are. Changing key is very much like coming to a fork in the road. So where I'm standing right now is the chord of G major. This road here is the key of C major. So this chord here, G, is chord 5 on this road, which is C major. But G major, as you know, is also chord 1 in the key of G major, that road down there. So this one chord is on these two roads, and here is a fork in the road. So, without your audience noticing, you can, a bit like a magician, with a bit of sleight of hand, you can take a turning down there. So one moment they're in C major, you get to the chord of G, you get an opportunity to take a different fork. So I am going to modulate, and I'm going to go that way in G major. There you are. Aren't you glad I went all the way to Italy to do that? Let's show how this works in practice. Okay, so let's take the world's most dull chord progression, 1, 5, 6, 4, which in C is C major, G major, A minor, F, okay? So if we're just doodling along, but we want to go to G, what do we got to do? Well, that G chord is not just G. It's not just chord 5 of C, it's chord 1 of G major. Shh. So when we get to that G, we're then going to use that to move to that key. Now, how do we know that we've moved to that key? The answer is you do what's called a cadence, which is essentially when you're writing a letter or an email, when you're writing an email, when you do a paragraph, new idea. That's what a cadence is. It's full stop. And the most traditional way of doing it is you go chord 1, chord 5, chord 1, or chord 2, chord 4, 5, chord 1, because all those leave you with a real, no question about it, where we are. We're in this key. Right, so let's try and do this. Yeah, C, yeah. Whoa, what just happened? I didn't see that happening. Yes, there you go, you see. Because what happened was we went C, G suddenly became chord 1 of G. So I went to chord 5 of G, which is D major, and then back to the G again. So chord 5 of G, D major, has got an F sharp in it. No F sharps in the scale of C. So that reinforces, boom. Knockout, we've done it. We've moved successfully from C to G major. Right, how about Tony Stark? Right, the Tony Stark method is pivot notes. So you don't just have to go using chords, you can just use a single note. How would you go, for example, from C major to C sharp minor? If, you know, on the scale of, on the circle of fifths, you know, they're not next door neighbours. They're like kind of miles and miles and miles and miles away. The circle of fifths is quite important with all this, because the closer, it's not a complicated idea really. The closer together things are on the circle of fifths, the more notes they have in common. The further away they are, the fewer notes they have in common. And in this particular exercise, changing key, obviously the more notes and chords they have in common, the better, because it makes it easier. So if you're going from C to C sharp minor or something, that's miles away. No, it's not. It's just one note away, using the pivot note. Okay, so if we have C major, you can manage to move seemingly seamlessly. And once you're there, you can reinforce the chord, the key you've arrived in. That's called a harmonic slide, and I've done a video on that actually. So you could, but you don't just have to use, you know, the third like that. You can use any note. I mean, so you can go from, you can go. Okay, so we're doing C. So that C becomes the pivot note, which allows us to go from C to A flat, or from C to. So pivot notes take a little bit more working with, because there's not this kind of logical kind of thing in quite the same way. It's a more tenuous connection, but it really works, and it can make your stuff sound really quite sort of modern and interesting. Definitely pivot notes are worth bearing in mind. But just one thing before we move on to the completely Doctor Strange, you can move through keys without actually landing there. So if you take a chain, for example, which is where you go, you have a sequence, like you go up to chord 4 each time. So we go from C to F, and then in F we go from F to B flat, and then in B flat you go from B flat to chord 4 of B flat, which is A flat. So you're going. You're not actually landing in any one of those keys, you're passing through. So it's not like going to stay in a town, it's like sitting on the train and watching the stations go by. But it does have the huge advantage, once you start a chain like that, or whatever form it may take, you've undermined people's sense of where they come from. So they, at which point you can go where on earth you like. So. So you can sort of reorientate people, go, oh yeah, that's where we were we? Anyway, that's definitely, so it's chains, we'll do another video on chains because they're really quite interesting, and these sort of, you know, harmonic sequences like that. Anyway, let's move on to Doctor Strange. You don't just have, you know, other options available are not just changing key, but changing mode. So if I have a simple tune, also, suppose I go, so what I've done is I've gone from a major key, C major, up to 4 major. I then do the same thing, but I go up to 4 minor. And then I can come back to C minor, or I can go somewhere else if I want. But changing mode like that gives you the same impact, or actually sometimes an even better impact than changing key. It gives that kind of, whoa, what's just gone on? That's really cool. Without too much hassle. I mean, So that's using parallel major and parallel major. Parallel major and parallel minor are quite simply where you use the same root but a major key or a major chord or a minor chord when you're in the other side's mode. So for example, if you're in C major and you want to go to C minor, those are the parallel major and parallel minor. But you can also do all kinds of other interesting stuff like using chromatic mediants, and I've done another video on that up there. So changing mode rather than changing key is definitely an interesting way to go. Now, one way we haven't examined, which is actually the hardest, I think, is you just change key. You're going. Pulling that off, although it's the most simple because you don't prepare, you just go boom, is actually much harder than using any of these pivot notes and things like that. A really good example is James Horner's "My Heart Will Go On." What? What just happened? We went from E major to A flat major. Circle of fifths, it's a long way round. It's a long way round. That's quite a journey. So with no preparation whatsoever, and it is genius. It works. But knowing what's going to work and what doesn't work puts it firmly in the Doctor Strange category. Jack, Jack. Rose, Rose. Rose, Rose, Jack, Jack. Oh, save me, I'm drowning, I'm drowning. Oh, no, 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 I'm going to slip into the icy depths. Oh, no, please don't, please don't. 3 minutes and 6 minutes, 6 seconds into the song. Oh, my God. Oh, blimey. It's a massive injection of harmonic interest. So look, that is my whistle-stop tour through the process of modulating. Experiment this because it really, really helps. It helps when you're trying to develop a 30-second idea into a 3-minute idea, or a 3-minute idea into a 10-minute idea. It just kind of refreshes your palette. It's just, and there are so many different ways of doing this. These are just some of the more obvious ones, but each of them has a little kind of offshoots and different ways of approaching it. So go and take a song which you can't, one of your own songs or pieces of music which kind of just runs out of steam a bit, and see if changing key doesn't breathe new life into it. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this. If you have, go and check out thinkspaceeducation.com because we do lots of interesting courses on how to write music and harmony and all kinds of good stuff. You could subscribe and then you'll get a little notification when I pop up again. Anyway, that's it from me. See you soon. Bye-bye.